Hello everyone, welcome to the bonus episode for this week. Today we are doing a character profile
of
Jed Stone.
Jed Stone, of course we are. Played by the magnificent Kenneth Cope, who sadly passed away just last week. We thought it'd be a good time, an opportune moment to have a look back at his character Jed on Coronation Street.
It wasn't in Coronation Street for very long, but it was a very significant character.
Well, I think so. He was in 128 episodes, and a good chunk of those were in his later return in the early 2000s as well. I think he definitely is a character who many people might be surprised at how little he's in it, considering how well known he is. And he's not, up there in terms of name recognition with Enya or Minnie or Hilda or anything like that. But he's definitely a character that I actually was quite shocked that how sporadic his appearances were when I looked into it. Is that about sort of where you are with him?
Yeah, I think so.
We've seen bits and pieces of the 60s, as you know. In fact, in the last week, we've watched a few more of Jed's classic moments just to remind ourselves for this. I'm going to say that Jed was a quite good character, but I think he wasn't super developed. He was very much kind of come in, do a little bit of nefarious deeds, because he wasn't a proper villain, was he? He was a cheeky scoundrel.
I don't know if you looked into this at all, but was he not just sort of like a mini Dennis or like...
Yeah.
Because they didn't have Dennis in the show all the time. No,
Dennis was also very much in and out in the first few years.
And I wonder if they were thinking, we need some young kind of, ne'er-do-well to stir up trouble on the street.
But he wasn't like, villainous in the same way as the gangsters these days. He was no Damon Hay. He was very lovable rogue who still had his finger in the criminal pies, whereas Dennis, who was his erstwhile companion, on the wrong side of the what's the phrase? Wrong side of the law. Yeah, that'll do. I was going to go for saying a bit more metaphoric, but that'll do for now. Dennis decided to go straight.
Side of the canal.
There we go. That'll do. Dennis decided to go straight, whereas Jed was his mate who led him astray and still kept his options open when it came to bending the rules.
He had a bit of scheme going on all the time, didn't he? And
yes.
Dennis had dreams.
Well, he wanted to, be
showbiz,
talent scout or whatever, whereas Jed would be much more decking and diving. I very much put him in the same category as the likes of Eddie Yeats, Graham Proctor.
Yeah.
Is that kind of, lovable rogue. Even Paul Foreman to some extent, who was a slight crimp when he came in. Ever so slight.
I think Jed might be the most entrepreneurial.
Oh, yeah.
Do you reckon?
Well, I mean, Eddie Yeats did used to get up to lots of harebrained crackpot schemes.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas from what I've seen of Jed, he had a bit more going for him. Like you could say, this could work.
One thing I miss about current Corrie compared to old classic Corries, no matter what era they're from, is that there's no proper ducker and diver or someone with a scheme on. Even Auntie Pam's probably the last.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Pam Hobsworth
she's
a female.
A scam going, didn't she?
Yeah.
And
she knew that what she was doing was wrong and against the law. She just hoped that she'd be able to get out of it if she needed to.
Bernie might have been a bit more like that if she'd been given different storylines. But yeah, I really like the characters who just always grasping for money and coming up with ideas and weird ways of doing it, because it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and you've got to be charming, and I think Jed absolutely was that.
Those kind of characters. And is that why, and there's no reason for me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, a bit of Chesney bashing, is that why Chesney has never really made it as an entrepreneur? When he was young, he had had a bit more going for him, didn't he? Because he had his cute looks. Yeah. And he used to have his dog stand at the market. And since then, Chesburger...
I think that Chesney, we will get back to Jed in a minute, was maybe when he was younger, he was a bit more willing to bend the rules a little bit.
Well,
I think under Scylla's instruction, quite a lot. But
I love the scammy people, and Jed Stone was definitely a bit of a scammer, wasn't he? And he was played, like as we've said, by Kenneth Cope, who definitely had that really cheeky chappy aura, but he had like a warm, kind heart there. His relationship with Minnie, who he called Ma, that was a really important part of kind of softening his character up and not just making him just a bit of a naughty
Yeah, from what I've seen, he obviously had friends on the street. He came in as a colleague, in the criminal sense, of Dennis Tanner, but he also became friends with the likes of Doreen and Sheila Birtles as well. So he had mates on the street, and they were all very much straight. They were...
Yeah, carry on.
You interrupted me to tell me
I was just
to
going to say, we
carry on.
haven't even done the...
Oh, no, we'll get there into it. We'll get there.
I know,
but I think it was the relationship with Minnie Caldwell in his longest stint in the mid-60s that really set him on the pedestal of he's a nice guy, really, because I mean, Minnie was a simple type, and she probably wasn't quite aware of everything that he'd done on all his naughty schemes, but she loved him, so we loved him too.
So the character of Jed Stone, he was born on the 6th of March 1940. His dad was called Spider Stone, which is not a sort of spider.
Well, this confused me a little bit.
Yeah,
and I
because
don't
he's
know.
got a person later on who's called Spider Web.
And for a character who's only made 128 episodes, appearances, he's got two significant-ish characters in his life called Spider. And neither of them are Spider Nugent either, of course. So there's 3 Corrie Spiders, and 2 of them are linked to Jed Stone. You've got his dad, whose nickname was Spider Stone. And then, later on, it turns out he's got a mate called Spider Web. So I don't know.
Spider Stone.
I don't know whether the writers were just a little bit, that'll do.
Yeah, well.
A bit devoid of imagination there for that one.
Well,
they spied opportunity.
Yeah, they did. He doesn't have a mum. He didn't have any brothers and sisters. But he first appeared...
As far as we know.
On the 24th of April, 1961. He last appeared on the 2nd of February 2009. As we said, he was in 128 episodes.
Yes.
And Kenneth Cope had been on TV for a long time before he was in
This wasn't his first role, was it?
No, as far back as 1953. He was a police constable in the miniseries Johnny, You're Wanted.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Yeah.
You can do such a range. You can do policeman, you can do criminal.
Yeah, exactly.
What more do you want?
He was also in some miniseries like The Adventures of Robin Hood. He's in 3 episodes of that, and he also did some episodes of ITV Playhouse.
I think if you're on telly in the 50s, you probably did ITV Playhouse, or was there a BBC equivalent? I don't know. Which I've never seen any of it. In my head, it's like they're still working out how to do episodes of TV, so they just put on a play.
Yeah.
And people at home who aren't quite used to watching TV yet and I don't know what they want go, oh, this is a bit like we were at the theatre on a tiny screen in black and white.
That new Tom Hanks film, is it called Here or something? And
I don't know that.
It's got the Robin Wright is her name, who was in Jenny and Forrest Gump, so they're both in a movie together again.
Oh, that's nice.
But I think it's called Here. But the gimmick is that it's filmed from a fixed point in their living room.
Right.
That's a play.
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, I don't even know whether ITV Playhouse had, dare I say it, moved 2 cameras. Like, was it a multicam
what
setup?
Who knows?
But yeah, as we say, so Kenneth Cope was not a stranger to TV when he arrived on Coronation Street, and when he did come in, it was just for the odd appearance here and there. He wasn't an original because, like you said, was it April he made his first appearance and Corrie started the previous December.
Yeah.
But there was definitely an idea of this Jed Stone character in Tony Warren's head, surely.
Well, yeah, because he was the reason. Well, he and Dennis were in prison together. So the first episode had Dennis Tanner in it and Elsie Tanner, and she was bemoaning the fact that he'd just come out of prison. And it was with Jed that he, got in trouble in the first place. Yeah.
I mean, I guess we don't... I can't remember. I'm sure this isn't the case, that Jed wasn't named that far back.
No.
Obviously, Coronation Street, when it was first written, was only going to be, 12, 13 episodes long or so. So there was no need to go any further than that with backstory for these characters. But when they decided, I think we've got something here, lads, they thought, well, let's expand.
Crank out some more.
Expand Dennis Tanner, very popular characters, friendship group, and bring in the guy that went to prison with him. So Jed was born in Liverpool. I didn't realise until a couple of days ago that Jed is not actually his name, it's John Edward Stone.
It could have been Jedward.
Yeah, not only was he a proto-Eddie Yeats, he was also a proto-Jedward, so there you go. He was born in Liverpool, and I think that this is perfect, and Corrie has got a history of scampish Liverpudlians.
Yeah.
I mean, Phelan, the ultimate scamp.
It's, very
and obviously
scampy.
Eddie Yeats as well. There's just something about that accent.
And
Sorry
also
to all
Cassie.
yeah, Cassie, exactly.
Current
There's
scamp.
just something about that accent
There's
that
a
makes you
thing.
think, whoa.
Manchester and Liverpool, I think.
Yeah. Zip up your wallets.
Oh no, we don't.
But I love.
Don't trust either of them down here.
I love the Liverpool accent, and I mean, even I was talking about Lloyd Mullaney, Lloyd Milani on the other podcast a couple of months ago, and on Red Dwarf, his character Lister is also a bit of a cheeky Scouser.
We're both huge fans of almost every regional. Just love regional accents in this country, and Liverpool's certainly got a very distinctive one, which is great. Love it.
But I do feel sorry for Liverpool that it's got a bit of a reputation of a hive of petty crime. I'm sure it's not true.
Street?
Well, yeah, I guess so. But they're also great musicians there. So
they've got a lot going for them.
Yeah.
Cilla Black.
So what was it that Dennis and
they broke into a newsagent.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And they were in jail. They were in prison for 6 months.
Yeah.
But I just want to say another thing about how infrequently he appeared, Jed, in the show, and it's partly because Kenneth Cope didn't really want to be in Coronation Street forever.
No.
And he I think he left when he wanted to, at various points.
His first big stint, or big-ish stint, was from April to the end of the year in 1961. And if you know Corrie history, broadcasting history, November 1961, thereabouts, was when the Equity Actors Strike took place. So
that was pretty bad.
The Coronation Street cast was reduced to a core of about 13 characters, and Kenneth Cope wasn't in contract, so off he went.
It's really fascinating to imagine how differently Coronation Street would have gone if there hadn't been an equity strike. They really had to come up with some, ideas, and maybe
out there concepts.
Was it really? Did it help Coronation Street? I'm going to argue maybe it did. Like, it helped them focus very strongly on a core small group of people out of necessity. That probably helped to strengthen their characters and make people feel like they knew them, because back in those days it was half an hour twice a week, so you didn't have 3 hours a week of intense Corrie.
No.
So you had to, didn't have as much a long time to get to know people.
Yeah,
so
like the early 1962.
Helped.
Yeah, early 1962, for example, there was an awful lot of Dennis Tanner going on, and I'm sure that he was already a popular character, but I'm sure that did an awful lot to boost his popularity as well. But we get ahead of ourselves. What did Jed Stone get up to in 1961? Oh, you can do this one if you like. I don't mind. Do you fancy?
Well, he shows up looking for Dennis at the Rovers, because I assume he keeps this under his hat, although he's not wearing it the first time we see him. He wants his help to rob a shop on Rosamond Street, but Dennis has gone straight now.
Yes.
Which no one would believe.
You mentioned his hat there, which I can't believe we've got nearly 15 minutes into this episode without mentioning Jed's trademark cap. Ina had her curlers. Yeah. Hilda had her curlers.
Yeah.
No,
curlers.
Sorry. Ina had her hairnet. Ina had her hairnet. God, sacrilege. Hilda had her curlers. Jed's headgear of choice was his flat cap, which he wore in nearly all his appearances. But you're right, this first one in 1961 was the first time, and maybe one of the only times, that we actually got to see his hair underneath. I
think he only took his hat off twice the whole time. Once was the first time he appeared, and the second time was when he was in hospital.
Yeah, when he comes back into it, 2008, I thought it was. I can't remember.
Well, you've written down 2009. Oh, he last.
Yeah. He was hospitalized in 2008, and we saw when he was in hospital, he didn't have a hat on, and even there was a scene in December 2008 where he had a Santa hat, but he liked a head covering, did Jed? And why not?
You got to keep your
touch of class. I mean, back in the day, everyone wore a hat all the time, as far as I know. There were other scenes throughout his stint of Jed Stone in bed, and he did even wear his flat cap to bed.
Yeah, but Dennis didn't wear a hat.
Did I say Dennis?
No.
Oh, no, Dennis didn't wear a hat. You
said everyone wore hats.
No, but,
Yeah, it was very normal to wear a hat.
Yes.
Right. So he comes back after...
Sorry, there's not much to say about Jed. We're just filling the time with random facts and inverted commas. Go on.
Fact of the day. People used to wear hats. Come back tomorrow for more.
100 years ago, it was very cold in the head region.
Don't say 100 years ago. This is 1961.
Right, come on.
So he returns 5 months later, looking for Dennis again. He wants to get a job at the Orinoco Club. Now, this is the nightclub Rita used to sing there, the Nightingale, Weatherfield Nightingale. But it was a bit of a seedy joint, wasn't it? But before long, he gets a job as the doorman, and he is amused. He finds Dennis practicing his interviewing skills on a teddy bear.
Dennis was so funny.
Dennis was my favourite, I think. Jed starts dating Jean Stark, who was a factory worker who had controlling parents. Now, she ended up lodging with Christine Hardman, and she was always going, oh, my mum and dad won't let me do this and won't let me do that.
Didn't make too many appearances because she was another casualty of the equity strike, but just didn't come back.
She reminded me of the one that Curly dated, who had Mummy and Daddy.
Oh, Kimberly Taylor.
Yeah. Do you not think?
Yeah, a little bit.
Parents were like breathing down her neck. Anyway, she was played by Rennie Lister, who was Kenneth Cope's wife.
Yeah.
But they both disappeared during the equity strike, but only one came back.
Yeah,
maybe he ate her.
I've read conflicting stories about when the pair of them got married. I read one thing say that just before she appeared on Coronation Street, they got hitched. Another one said just after. But that's quite nice, and it does make you wonder how things could have turned out differently had the equity strike not taken place, and we could have had a married couple playing a dating couple. I suppose Corrie has had real life couples
happened quite a few times.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah Louise and Jason, for example, Tina O'Brien and Ryan were very.
I was thinking of Elsie and Howard. And
oh gosh, yeah, of course.
His face.
Elsie and Alan.
Alan Howard.
Yes,
okay.
But alas, that was the last that we got to see of Jean Stark.
Stark or Start?
Stark.
Right, so he gets up to a few shenanigans that year, including getting him to trouble with Elsie. He took him to an all-night party in where else but Party Town, Glossop. And then the equity strike strikes.
Yeah. He's very much a character that just has these episode-long little schemes. I like much him. Like Eddie did later on.
He had a little kind of like baby face, didn't he? Like a kind of innocent, like cheeky face, and he never lost that even when he came back as an older man.
Yeah,
he still had that kind of twinkle in his eye and is kind of very affable. He's the kind of guy that if he came to the door, he'd be scamming you out of some money, but you might give him like a $5 for a dishcloth or something because of how charming he is.
He's very much a kind of Bert the chimney sweep kind of guy, isn't he?
Ever so humble. I still only think it's not nailed down.
So Kenneth Cope, Jed Stone, was one of the first characters to come back to Coronation Street after the equity strike. I think who was the first one to come back? Was it old Lucille Hewitt? Maybe the first one that came back. Maybe I don't know, but Jed was. I mean,
these episodes you can't watch them. You can only watch the ones that are on the DVDs.
Yeah,
so
and
you have to kind of
there are a few bits on
cobble
YouTube
it together.
Here and there. But yeah, so Jed came back for one random brief appearance. Guess what he was up to? Looking for Dennis. If he wasn't scamming, he was looking for Dennis.
Right.
But it turned their paths just didn't really cross very often, and this was a perfect example of this. Dennis by this time had disappeared down to London, and so Jed comes back for literally half an episode and is like, "Oh, I better disappear off again." I don't really know what was going on there.
To him, like, Kenneth, do you want to come back for a half an episode to look for Dennis? Yeah, if you're paying me, I'll do whatever.
Wick. I think, once you've come back off strike, you probably want to take every job that's going for you. And Corrie were probably kind of scrabbling around a bit, going, what do we do now? We've got these actors that are dripping back into the programme. I mean, from what I hear about what was going on towards the end of the equity strike, they were definitely
banging their heads against the wall.
Well, yeah, and coming up with bizarre stories of haunted houses and sea lions in Bath.
Well, I like that.
A familiar face.
That era was so chaotic.
It was.
But I loved it.
So, guess what Jed Stone was doing by November when he returned to Coronation Street next?
Whoa.
He was looking for Dennis Tanner.
Oh.
He's just like a forlorn kid, isn't he? Like, Dennis.
He reminds me.
Here? I need someone to do some crimes with.
He wasn't that broad of an accent.
It doesn't matter.
It reminds me. You won't know this reference. Red Dead Redemption 2 is the character is looking for a guy called Gavin, and he spends the whole game looking for a guy called Gavin. I'm pretty sure that's the guy's name. And
it reminds me of Luigi's Mansion, and Luigi keeps going around that gang going, Mario.
But it reminds me of, you probably won't get this reference either, but a computer game called Mario, where Mario's looking for Princess Peach, but she's always in another castle.
Right, let's get on with this. People are turning off this in droves. So, He's back, November 1962. He tries it on with Christine Hardman, and then Frank Barlow comes to her rescue.
Because he was sweet on her.
Frank Barlow, I don't know whether by November 1962 Frank was sweet on Christine, but definitely into 1963, so he had designs on
his
her,
wife
so
was
maybe.
barely cold in the ground before he was complaining that he didn't have anyone to cook his dinner
Dick
for
his
him.
tenner and wash his pants for him,
Yeah.
So his latest scheme is selling on wash basins. So he's got this job lot of wash basins, which I think probably fell off the back of a lorry, and he sells them to Jerry Booth, who is like the local affable builder, for 24 of them for £25, while Len, Jerry's boss, is away. So Jerry thinks he's got a bit of a bargain here. But again, Jerry was... I'm not surprised that he was able to be easily convinced.
Was it a gullible, simple man?
Yeah, he saw the good in everybody,
and
did
I don't
Jerry.
mean simple like, harken back to the beginning
Forrest
of the
Gump.
podcast, Forrest Gump. I mean simple as in a very basic bloke. I don't think he really thought too much about being scammed.
No. He had a great voice as well.
Yeah,
Can't
he
do
did.
that one. So he tries to get Elsie to
probably my
take him in
favourite
as a lodger. Does Jed. And despite Dennis writing to her to try and convince her to write into his mum, she's like, no, I don't think so.
I don't blame her. I don't know why
I don't want a crim under my roof, thank you very much.
I don't know why she said no, but I assume it's because he was a bad influence on Dennis anyway.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's down to Dennis that they ended up in Borstal. I think Jed was maybe 2 years older than Dennis, and he was definitely pulling the strings and steering them in the criminally kind of direction there. So Elsie's like, no, thank you very much. Fortunately, though, for Dennis, there was another gullible person on the street who was very welcome to take him in, and that was Minnie Caldwell. We've spoken about her quite a few times on some of these classic character profiles in the last 3-4 years since we've really got into retro Coronation Street. And Minnie Caldwell was the loveliest person, wasn't she? Simple again, even simpler than Jerry Booth. She was very much kind of a.
She was a sweet old lady.
She wasn't a batty, sweet old lady.
Yeah.
She definitely saw the good in everybody. She did have a bit of a twinkle in her eye. She could be a little bit naughty.
She was mischievous sometimes.
She was proper classic granny kind of character.
And she was, I think, kind of a bit like Kirk is or was when in his heyday, where although he misunderstands things in a much different way, she did comically misunderstand things at times.
Yeah, for sure. She didn't always see the subtext in what people were saying. She missed one or two things here and there.
Yeah.
But anyway, she finds Jed Stone having a bit of a sit on Coronation Street, instantly takes pities for him. I mean, he's pulling a Stu Carpenter 60 years early by faking a cough to try and get sympathy. He's even able to haggle with her successfully over the rent. So over the next few weeks and months, they grow really close. It is lovely. She calls him Sonny Jim, and he was really like a little ray of sunshine in her life because, she was getting on a bit. She was... She had the friends of Martha and Ina, but they both definitely talked down to her, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
They didn't treat her nicely, but Jed did, and I think he was probably the only person in her life that really truly appreciated her. It was lovely.
Ma.
He called her Ma, lovely. Yeah, Ina, on the other hand, does not approve of Minnie's new lodger. She knows what he's like, and again, Ina was very sharp, and she
doesn't
could
suffer
see.
fools gladly.
No, but Minnie does. She was very glad to suffer this particular fool. And
She just wanted some company.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much that a cat company can give you because she was a bit of a cat lady, was Minnie. Anyway, so Len gets back after his trip away summer and finds out about these wash basins that Jerry has acquired.
Yeah.
He assumes they're stolen as well, and has a massive go at Jerry for buying them because he so rarely sells them himself.
Why does he need 24?
Why do I need 24 wash basins? What am I going to do with this? So
the people are only just, and you'll know this, people that were alive in the 60s, only just working out how to use buckets. I mean, how are they going to use a wash basin?
He starts smashing them up because he's pretty mad at this point because £25 that's a lot of bob
and
back then.
This is Len. You know,
Yeah.
this is Len we're talking
Temper
about.
man.
I think
Temper
this was
tantrum guy.
about 500. I don't have my phone with me, but I'm guessing this is about 500 quid's worth of stuff.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I wouldn't want to be sending that on wash basins myself. But then
Maybe
if
a
I
bit more,
did,
maybe
I
600.
wouldn't start smashing them up with a sledgehammer because you're just asking for trouble then.
But
So he
Len
does
was
that.
not known for his good sense.
Not always. He was a bit hot-headed. Yeah, he does that. He has a go at Jed. Jed is able to produce a receipt for them, though, actually. It says,
So it wasn't
there we go.
stolen.
It wasn't stolen whatsoever. But it does show that he only bought them himself for £7.10 shillings, is that? I told money.
No.
£7, 10 slash hyphens. Whatever that is. So he later crows to Jed, though, does Len, that he's been able to sell on the remaining basins for £30. So there we go. Len gets the last laugh here. At the end of 1962, Christmas 1962, the Mission Hall put on a play, Lady Lawson Loses. Jed offers to help out by obtaining costumes for that, and they definitely come from of dubious origin. And he also gets completely the wrong period in history. So, whoops. He also somehow gets other sound effects for it as well. Don't ask me about that. This did come from Coropedia. I'm not sure what they meant there. But can you buy sound effects
yes,
in 1962?
Yeah.
It's not like you get a CD of sound effects like you can these days.
Willem Scream. You know that one?
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Anyway, the whole play ends up as a bit of a farce. And I think that one's on the DVD.
How about this? Quack, quack.
Yeah, there we go. We've seen a variety of the Mission
productions
of the time, and this one was certainly farcical, but it's all good fun.
Bring them back.
Later on in the year, Jed sadly finds that nobody wants to spend New Year with him, but he's eventually able to persuade Doreen Lostock and Sheila Birtles to let him into their party.
Now that was a swinging party, I've got no doubt.
I bet it was. They did the thing, this was very of an era, wasn't it, where, I don't know why people don't still do this. Before midnight, somebody has to go out to the house, then after midnight they have to be knock on the door to be let in. Sadly disappeared tradition.
Don't you also have to go around the house with in one door and out the other? And
Possibly. I'm sure that Alf Roberts had that happen to him one time.
Yes.
But there we go. This was Jed from the 62 to 63. Speaking of 1963, Gemma, would you like to say what Mr. Stone got up to on that year?
Well, he makes a mess, doesn't he, of the flat.
The Sheila and Doreen's flat.
He does. I'm just doing something. I don't know why you asked me.
Well, it's your
What
turn.
year was it? 1962.
1962. You're doing a bit of
I'm just
maths.
working something out. Okay.
Well,
right, so he gets in trouble. And then he's got another scheme, which is to sell some risque calendars, maybe some London Lovelies, to the menfolk of Weatherfield. But Ina's like, these are last year's calendars. But I just wanted to say, you can reuse your calendars. So if he'd just waited till 1973, he could have sold them. And they would have been lined up.
They'd have been vintage risque calendars.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, think of the ankles on those.
And if you want to know, the next time we can use his risque menfolk calendar, it would be 2029. So I can't wait for that to come back around. So we also learned that he's weeks behind with his rent to Minnie, and so he tries to flog off a load of sherry, don't know where it came from, to pay her, but Jack buys it.
I think Minnie often allowed Jed to not pay her because she just appreciated the company so much. There was one time she said that he doesn't always pay me in money, he pays me in good deeds and kind words and so on. And to be honest, for some people that is enough.
But Minnie was always having money troubles though, wasn't she? She wasn't very good with money. And so she probably did need it. But luckily, Jack bails them out.
Minnie's money troubles.
Yeah. Jed gets a stall on the market and he employs Sheila Birtles as his bit skirt assistant. Elsie and Jerry think this is a bad idea, but she doesn't care because she's, I think, bored. I don't know. Are they dating?
I don't know whether they're dating at this point. Now, I imagine Jed was perfect for a market trader kind of guy because of that charming persona that he had. I reckon that he could sell coal to Newcastle.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
From Liverpool?
Yes.
So they try and sell these genuine Fair Isle sweaters, which were actually made in Japan. And so Sheila's having to model them, and they get a crowd going, and he asks Minnie to be his plant and be like, oh, what wonderful jumpers these are. I would like to buy one. And then everybody goes, oh, yeah, I want one too. And then Minnie goes off with this bargain that she's got, and then comes back and goes, "Oh, there'll be some hot soup for you at home, Sonny Jim," and everyone realises it's a big trick.
So funny.
That's just what she was like. So Doreen winds Jerry up by telling him that Sheila is in love with Jed. Oh, maybe Jerry and Sheila.
I don't know. I don't think that Jed really had anything resembling a steady girlfriend when he was on the show.
So he goes round to warn him off, and then Florrie hears about this, who tell Sheila's parents, and then they turn up to say, right, let's discuss our daughter's upcoming nuptials with this person, because they already disapproved of him last year.
Yeah, they basically... Florrie gets the wrong end of the stick, doesn't she? She thinks that Jed and Sheila are actually going out, and Sheila's parents
are like, what the hell?
Yeah.
We need to sort this out.
And they'd already met Jed last year, and they knew
him.
that he was a bit of a clown, so
Sheila's like, I'm not getting married to him, and Jed's like, oh God, thank goodness for that. Annie gets in trouble with a brewery when a rep finds that they're selling Jed's sherry. Now, this was a bit of a risky thing in the first place. I'm surprised Jack bought the sherry, because these brewery people and the weights and measures people.
I was just going to say, the weights and measures people always seem to be turning up on classic Coronation Street.
It's either them, or it's a policewoman trying to buy firelighters on a Sunday and gets Florrie in trouble, or it's the TV licence people.
Yeah. But they're like the Ofsted, aren't they, of Coronation
pubs,
Street? Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't really go anywhere, and Jed just goes, sorry about that, and it's all fine.
And Jack says, it's all right, lad.
Jed installs a second-hand TV in Minnie's house in 1963, so it's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, she probably was missing out on watching herself. Ina complains it's not up to scratch, so that's sad.
Some of them.
This is just an episode's worth
as thorough as we can get.
An episode's worth of action there.
Yeah.
Doreen is not impressed when Jerry sets her up on a date that turns out to be Jed. Jed thinks he's onto a winner when he buys the Hewitt's car from them for £35. He was going to sell it on for a profit, but it's a dud. Nobody wants it. Joke's on him. Then we have Leonard Swindley. He's looking for somebody to look after the mission for a while, and he doesn't really have any takers apart from Jed, so he lets him do it for £4 a week.
£4 a week, blimey.
So he organises a over 60s club social, which is very successful.
Yeah, we've seen. I'm pretty sure this one's on the DVD, because I remember at the end of the episode, there's Jed and I think Doreen and Sheila and a few of the others just doing the twist in the hall.
This is an over 60s social.
Well, I think there's the over 60s first, and then they all go home. All the old ladies go home. And then, because Jed's got the keys to the place, they just use it as a bit of a party hall for the evening. Yeah, but they ended up annoying the neighbours, didn't they? Particularly Mr. Jackson of Jackson's Chippy.
Yeah, he gets very annoyed, so the police come round to try to find out who was responsible for the noise. Jed does a runner, and he leaves the street, so he's trying to explain to Minnie where he's going.
Do you think Weatherfield police kind of missed the days when the most heinous of crimes that they had to investigate was people who were a bit noisy? Like these days, it's Swain going after Joel for beating up a girl
control.
And all sorts. Where's the petty crimes? No time for that.
Nobody cares about that.
Well, they don't get sold anymore, do they?
No. So Jed does a runner. He leaves her a note to say he's going out for a drive, and she is distraught when she realises he has gone to Liverpool for good.
Did you say who the her was?
Minnie.
Yeah. There was both times, this time and the next one, that Jed leaves. He doesn't want to say goodbye to Minnie, which was quite sweet.
Breaks her heart.
Yeah. And that did show that despite his criminal leanings, he definitely had the biggest of soft spots for her, which was lovely. So Cope had planned for that to be the end of Jed, but he agreed to come back 3 years later. In a TV Times interview at the time, he said, I swore I wouldn't do it, but 2 years after I left, I'm still getting letters from fans asking, when are you coming back? In the end, I just had to go back. So he was... What?
Good accent.
Yeah, I
went all over the place.
I went all over with that accent. He basically, it was a case of Corrie wanted him back, the fans wanted him back. He was like, go on then.
Pressure.
Exactly.
Imagine being wanted. That would be lovely.
That would be lovely. 1966 was his final year in the classic show, and it was actually his most frequently
frequent appearances.
A frequent appearance in that. He was in 56 episodes in 1966.
No, there can't have been that many episodes. There can't have been more than.
Well, I
like
imagine there was about 104 or so
104.
per year.
So
yeah, so it was about half of the
episodes.
episodes a year, which is pretty good. Lots more criminal schemes, low-level criminal schemes. So he shows up on the street just as the right time because Minnie is having more money woes. He discovers that she's got a loan, is being charged massive amounts of interest for it. So he and Dennis con money out of the guy lending it to her in order to settle the debts. Nice. Then we get, over the course of February, a whole gamut of get-rich-quick schemes from Jed, including putting a fruit machine in Gamma Garments. Don't really know what that was doing there. Hope Emily wasn't too tempted. Running a market store with Lucille this time, selling junk, starting a waxwork business. I really would like to see this. Apparently he got a load of waxworks from the local... models from the Waxwork Museum of like Gandhi and Charlie Chaplin, and he melted them down to try and remold them into the shape of the Beatles. I mean, Gandhi, John Lennon, they got the round glasses. I can see that.
Who's Charlie Chaplin?
What do you mean, who's Charlie Chaplin? Oh, which Beatle would he be? I thought you were
Charlie
showing
Chaplin?
your massive historical film ignorance there.
Paul?
Yeah, why
Paul
not?
McCartney?
Why not?
Well, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
None of this works.
No, but he has temporary success with hiring the archers under the viaduct to expand his business.
Little did we know when Gary opened his little furniture tat shop under there that he was just continuing the great tradition of Jed Stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he also does a similar stuff under there.
Sells tat.
Yeah,
or
sells a load
attempts
of
to.
crap.
Yeah, Jed and Dennis open up this auction room called the Viaduct Bargain Boutique. And so they open it to a big fanfare with a celebrity guest touted, which turns out to be Minnie Caldwell. Who else? And the storyline as this opens is you get Stan Ogden, who flogs them a picture of Hilda's mum to salon.
Why would you buy a picture of a random lady?
Well, I don't know.
Maybe she looks like somebody famous.
I'm sure that Dennis and Jed were amenable to the idea of saying it was somebody else, or maybe it's just a fancy lady.
Maybe she looked like Queen Victoria.
It's not like these days. You can't just open your phone up and have a whole load of lovely ladies to look at. Back then,
Do you think Hilda's mum was a looker?
She might have been.
She
might have been. Old Mrs. Crabtree.
We don't know.
Quite the apple of someone's eye. So
the crab apple.
Exactly. So within a few weeks, sadly for them, the business is closed. They haven't got planning permission.
Don't worry about the picture because Hilda gets it back.
Hilda gets it back. She goes over there, sees it's on sale, and she's like, "Thank you very much, that's mine." So next venture, boarding kennels. Again, paving the way for Kirk and the Sutherlands. But that's just as unsuccessful because the noise keeps the locals up and they manage to lose quite an important dog there, one called Penelope, who belonged to a local villain called Big Arthur Johnson.
Right.
So,
for some reason, the idea that a big name criminal uses a kennel to board his dog just seems really quaint and sweet to me.
I know.
Like, you'd think a proper criminal would just, chuck her in the canal and get a new dog when he came back off holiday.
I think that Arthur Johnson sounds like a really quaint name for a criminal as well. So he's like, oh, I need a nickname. Big Arthur Johnson. Now they'll be trembling in their boots.
Because his surname's Johnson.
Big Johnson. Who are Austin Powers. Right, so Jed goes to the World Cup. Yay. I don't know much about football, but I know it was on in 1966. We did quite well. That
1966 for Weatherfield, Coronation Street, and also the people of this country was exactly like the World Cup of Quidditch for Harry Potter.
It was. I'm going to say, and maybe I'm revealing my ignorance here, what I didn't realise was that when we won the World Cup last, we were holding it here.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, good. So it's not just...
in this country. No wonder we won.
No wonder we won. We didn't have to... We could speak the lingo.
Well, we also probably rigged it.
Probably. Anyway, that bit didn't get covered in Coronation Street, but they did have characters going to it. And this was lovely. It was a bit like when they had the Commonwealth Games in the early 2000s. When was it? 2002? 2000? I can't remember. And Norris was a medal bearer.
It was a bit like when they had the Quidditch World Cup in Harry Potter.
Yes, it was, but I'm trying to link this to Coronation Street. But they had characters going to it. Jed goes there with David, with Stan, some of the other guys. Stan gets into trouble by being a bit loutish. So
What? No way.
we don't do that at football matches here.
Stan would never.
He gives his name to the coppers as Jed Stone.
Oops.
Whoops. Anyway, that's almost it for Jed. His final exit from the street was later that year after the World Cup, where he finds from his mate, Spiderweb, he was mentioned earlier, that the police are onto him for receiving 60 stolen blankets.
Oh my God.
What do you do?
I feel like stolen blankets are the same as like stealing food, you know? I guess he wasn't stealing 60 blankets because he was very, very cold.
No.
He probably stole them from orphans.
I suppose it was quite cold and wet.
It's
back in the north, back in those days, yeah. So anyway, he's got these stolen blankets, but the Rozzers are onto him. So he plans to flee the area, but he can't because Minnie is ill with food poisoning.
Coming out both ends.
So he's trying to find an excuse to go. He nurses her back to health, and then as a final thank you to her, he plans a birthday party for her. But he knows it's a farewell party. This is a really kind of bittersweet episode, isn't it? Because they're there, he's put the party together, detective turns up to arrest Jed, but Jed, ever the charmer, is able to convince this guy to pretend to be a mate of his, so not to upset Minnie, and he kind of makes out to Minnie that...
Well, he says to the guy, can I please go to the party to say goodbye to Ma?
Yeah, let me go to the party. Say, you just pretend to be one of my mate. I won't leave your sight, honestly. And the guy's like, nah, go on then, you scamp.
He's like, we have no other crime going on.
No. So, no. Can anyone hear any loud noise? No.
It's not Sunday, so firelight is fine. You can sell them.
So Jed goes to Minnie at this party and says, look, this is me mate. We're going to go away for a bit. So I'll see you when I see you. And she waves him off. He thinks that he's been able to save her feelings there, but as the twist, the sting in the tail towards the end of the episode is Minnie recognised this guy. He's like the son of one of her friends, right. So she knows that he's a policeman, and all that time she knew that Jed was being arrested, so she didn't want to say anything because she knew that what he was doing was trying to... It's
while
really
they're singing.
Crying Minnie is enough to break anyone's heart because she was so lovely. Anyway, that's the last we see of the pair of them together. What a lovely friendship that was. Following month, word reaches the street that Jed's been jailed for 6 months. Stolen blankets, serious business. I suppose it is not his first offence, though, is it? Minnie pretends not to know about it so that Jed won't be upset when Dennis visits him. But anyway, before long, she receives a message to sell all his belongings, and that is it for classic Coronation Street Jed. Now, in the intervening years, because he does come back, we find out that he's in jail a couple of times. He's in and out, but he's mostly going straight. He moves to Liverpool. He gets into double glazing business.
That's a scam as well.
What, double glazing is a scam?
Isn't it the way they sell it, though? It's like some things, you can't buy them in a normal way.
It's like a blanket for your windows,
isn't it? You can't just buy a car like a normal human. You can't buy double glazing like a normal human. You have to go through these weird salespeople. What is that about?
I don't know. Anyway, he sends Dennis a telegram when he marries Jenny Sutton in 1968, so we hear about him every now and then. But by 1973, he's back behind bars again, sharing a cell with, we mentioned him earlier, Eddie Yeats.
Tea leaf.
Exactly. So I do like how we've got that little connection there.
Yeah.
He does pass the torch on to Eddie, and I think that Eddie was a much more successful character.
Yeah.
I think Jeffrey Hughes
he was in it more.
Yeah, he was in it for a good 10 years or so.
And also, I think...
And then pairing him up with the Ogdens was certainly...
they were younger, so they got up to more shenanigans with him, whereas Minnie was just... being taken care of.
Jed was a good character, but I'm not going to say he was one that I really, really loved. Whereas Eddie Yeats, on the other hand, again, I've not seen a whole load of him, but there's just something about him that made me take to him just that bit more. They
both have very twinkle in their eye actors.
Absolutely.
I think, although, Kenneth Cope's not a super household name, I still think people will recognise him from things. And he's one of these people that, even if you're not sure where you know him from, you see him, you're like, oh, I like that guy.
Yeah.
I don't remember why, but I think he's not. I like him. He's got that aura.
Yeah, for sure.
Very warm.
So by 1973, he's planning to go back to the street again, but he can't because he's behind bars. So Eddie is up for parole. So he says, Eddie, look, can you go to Coronation Street? Go and see Ma for me. Tell her I'm all right. And Eddie goes and doesn't leave for 10 years. Eventually, Jed gets out of prison.
So he was responsible for Eddie being introduced to the show.
Exactly.
Because Eddie turns up to go, I bring glad tidings from Jedwood.
From Jed Stone. So anyway, Jed finally gets out. He goes and lives in 23 Nightingale Terrace. Don't ask me where that is in relation to the street, because I don't think anybody really knows. Nearby. And we're led to believe he keeps in touch with Minnie off screen. Now, this Nightingale Terrace thing was definitely a revision to his history. Well, not a revision, it was just filling in the gaps when he does come back. As far as we know as viewers, we've got no idea what Jed's getting up to during most of this time. And Kenneth Cope is going on to continue to lead a very successful career in TV and stage and film. But he does also come back a little bit. He dabbles with a bit of Corrie in the intervening years. Turn Out the Lights was a sitcom spin-off of Coronation Street starring Arthur Lowe as Leonard Swindley as a paranormal investigator, which we've still not seen any of.
I'd love to see that.
We must watch that one day. So Kenneth Cope writes 2 episodes of that. And then when Margot Bryant sadly passes away in 1988, I think it was like the 1st of January 88, in February, Kenneth Cope presents a tribute show to her, and he's there kind of in character as Jed. He's got his flat cap on, and you see at the very beginning of the episode, you can see this on YouTube if you're interested, he goes up to number 5, which was Ivy's home back then, I think, and he knocks on the door and he's going, Ma, and then he turns to the camera and says, hello everybody,
dead.
She's dead. I'm Kenneth Cope, or maybe I'm Jed Stone. I don't really know. Let's watch some classic clips. Yeah.
How weird would it be to do that for like somebody you knew in real life? And I know. It must be very strange.
Yeah. That is worth watching, actually, because, as I say, Minnie Caldwell is a brilliant, brilliant character. With these clip shows, what I found back with some of the older clip shows is they had very long clips. These days, when you put a clip show on, the clips they show are like 30 seconds or so, and he gets enough to get the idea of the scene. But some of these, it's like, yeah,
okay,
I don't really get why you picked that one. Move on. But a bit of trivia for you there, because not only was it clips, it also had interviews with various behind-the-scenes folks. And Eileen Derbyshire, who, as we know, has always been very, very reclusive and, camera shy, not wanting to do any publicity.
As herself,
exactly. She did have an interview there where she was talking about Margot Bryant, who played Minnie Caldwell. So that's worth checking out if you want to know what Emily Bishop is like in real life. Very rare. Did you watch the other thing that I sent you the other day? Because this got me down the rabbit hole. According to Corriepedia, Eileen Derbyshire has only had 2 interviews about Coronation Street and being incredible. Emily Bishop, and I did find another one. I don't know if this is the other one that she was referring to, but when she went to the palace, they were referring to. But when she went to the palace 10-12 years ago to get her MBE, I'm gonna say, alongside Barbara Knox, there's a Manchester Evening News clip on their website of the pair of them having come out of the palace, and they're just for about 5 minutes or so just having a good old chat with some reporters, and you get to see Emily, or Eileen Derbyshire, is a little bit posher than Emily was in real life, but both of them were a little giddy in this interview. It's worth watching it. It's really, really nice, actually.
Good.
Right, so that was all we thought we would see of Jed Stone until 2008, when they decided to bring him back. Why not? And do you want to say a little bit about this? Because both of us, we watched this when it was on, not really having any idea about who Jed Stone was. This was still 4 years before the podcast started. We were Corrie fans, but we didn't know massively about the old days, particularly this character who'd only been in 100 odd episodes.
I know. I really wish I could go back in time and be more excited about it, because this happens quite often in my early days of watching Coronation Street with you, where it'd be like, oh, so-and-so's back, or thingy's coming back, or this is, and I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, returns aren't, we had loads of returns this year in Coronation Street, but to get somebody who hadn't been on the show for 42 years and bring them back, there must have been people watching that going, oh my gosh, I watched this guy as a kid and look, he's back. Very much the same as we got with Dennis Tanner a couple of years later when he came back.
Now, we were doing the show then, but this 2000...
No, we weren't. When Dennis came into it, we weren't.
We weren't?
He was in it when he came back, but when he returned, that was before...
What are you talking about? We started the podcast in 2012.
Yeah.
So in 2008, when Jed Stone is coming back, I wouldn't have really had much reason to even think about what I thought about it.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
But But when Dennis Tanner came back, I thought that was a little bit before the podcast started. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But it is, I suppose, similar to if somebody from the early 70s just turned up now. It's not, it's not impossible to happen. I'd love it. But it must have been very, very cool for people at the time.
I can't think of who they could bring back who I would get super excited about. But I'm sure that there are some people who would definitely be...
Well, there's some characters that kind of had kind of tragic ends, didn't they? I mean, we lost the actress who played Doreen Lostock. The one who played Lucille Hewitt died tragically young.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah. I don't know whether there's many people left. I mean, I suppose
if only Ken wasn't in it anymore, he could come back.
Right, so I guess this must have been pretty cool, but there is the risk of a character not living up to your expectations. And if you're like, oh, I love Jed, he was brilliant, and it comes back and it doesn't work.
I don't know how you would feel about this, because obviously Jed, when he came back, was a very different person. He was fearful, he was elderly, he was vulnerable, and I think if you watched him when he was in it originally, you're not going to be far off that yourself. You're going to be starting to feel the passage of time.
A little bit of a dodder.
And it might not really, maybe you were young, I don't know, but you might start to think, I don't know if I like this story because it just reminds me of being old. Like, I don't like it when people talk about being old now because I'm starting to feel it myself and I don't like to be reminded, and I'm only 40, so...
We watched, I kind of find, there's lots of clips of Jed's 2008-2009 return on YouTube, and we were kind of fast forwarding through a few of them the other day, weren't we?
Yes.
After having watched a few of the classic 60s clips of him, and it's like, it is him, it's amazing. Like over 40 years in between, and he's still got the same mannerisms, the same voice. You're right, he is a different character, but equally he is still a bit of a ducker and a diver, and he's still, very importantly, got that flat cap on.
And lovely touch, he had a cat called Sunny Jim.
Yeah, I know. Well, we get to see in his house, don't we, this Nightingale Terrace house, and he's got a picture of him and Minnie Caldwell on the mantelpiece.
And he looks at his pictures.
Yeah, and he's got a little box of memories, and there's old publicity shots from the 60s in there. It's lovely,
Let's pay Getty for that. Right, do you want me to do this? So,
yes.
So 2008, the reason he is reintroduced is because Tony Gordon's up to no good.
Now that's a villain.
Now that's an accent too.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to evict some tenants so he can redevelop the area where Jed lives. And
the Nightingale Terrace is a bit of a slumland at this point.
Well, it wasn't a slumland. I know Tony keeps calling it a slumland, but it was just a house the same as the people in Coronation Street live in.
It had like trolleys in the street and mattresses against the walls of the house. Shocking stuff.
What's the name of that? The Paul Robeson estate.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. But not an estate. It was just a terrace.
It's just a terrace. So Jed's one of the people that lives there with his cat, and he doesn't want to move. He won't get bribed. And Tony Gordon keeps coming around personally to menace this poor man. And eventually, Jed has a stroke because of all this bullying that's going on, and he goes to hospital. And when he's in hospital, he goes to the canteen, and Emily Bishop is working there. And he's like, I remember you, Emily Nugent. And she's like, I'm not Emily Nugent anymore. Who are you? And he's like, oh, it's me, Jed Stone. Guess what's happened?
I don't know how much Emily and Jed's paths crossed back in the 60s. I know they did a little bit, but...
I can just imagine him being like, oh, Jed Stone is quite a character, Mr. Swindley, but I wouldn't buy anything from him. No, quite right, Miss Nugent. Well, stay away from him.
I'm surprised you didn't say, aren't you the person who tried to put the fruit machine in my shop?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mr. Swindley had conniptions about that. Right.
Yeah, so Emily's the one that takes him in.
Right, so when he gets discharged from hospital, Emily asks him to move in with her. Norris is living there too. He doesn't like this, but he is very curious because he hears about Tony evicting him. Yeah,
and Norris was... he had... Say what you like about him and sometimes making a mountain out of a molehill, but he could spot a villain sometimes, didn't he? He did it with Richard Hillman, and he could do it with Tony Gordon. He knew
he's in your business.
But because Norris was a bit of a boy who cried wolf kind of guy, everyone was just kind of over him to shut up.
Yeah. So Tony's not happy when he finds out Jed's hanging around the street. And even more so when Jed tells him that he's heard that Maria's got dirt on him about Liam's death, and that he's going to meet up with her so they can compare notes.
Tony arranged for Liam Connor, Maria's husband, to get run over as we all remember, I'm sure.
On his hen do.
So when Jed,
stag do.
Yeah, when Jed finds out that there's somebody else living around here that's got dirt on him, he makes a beeline for her.
That's right. So Jed catches Tony having a villainous discussion with Jimmy Dockerson, who is that the guy who played Hugo in?
No, that was a
different guy.
That was different. I wondered that at
forgotten.
first. No,
Right.
this was just henchman for hire. He was the guy who ran over Liam Connor, and then there were a few other things. He was the guy. I don't know if you remember the following year that Tony convinced Carla that she'd killed. Do you remember? Carla whacks this guy over the head in the flat. He goes down. He planks onto the floor. She thinks that she's killed him, and Tony convinces her that she has. Yes, but the other guy came later.
What a hideous flat that was.
I don't remember.
So Tony gives Jed £200 to keep his mouth shut about this conversation that he's heard. But Jed's like, I'm still going to the police because he wants more money. And this confrontation between Jed and Tony happens in the factory. And quite famously, Tony strangles Jed and bundles him in a wicker knicker basket. It wasn't wicker, it was just a bin.
Plastic knicker bin.
Well, it was a fabric bin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He thinks he's dead, so he just leaves him in there.
Well, they have the underworld party that night, don't they? And then they use the basket as a table, and Tony's there like eyeing this basket that they're all storing their drinks and nibbles on, knowing that Jed, as far as he knows, is just decomposing away in there. But
now, factory's
he's
quite
made of tough stuff. Is Jed?
A good place to kill someone and leave them in a bin.
Yes, it is. It is. Yes.
So this is three. Well, Jed didn't die, but this is like nearly 3 people.
What?
Because we had...
The factory is quite a murder hotspot,
it really
isn't
is.
it, really?
Because we had...
We had old Polish Darefarer.
Yeah.
We had what's his face?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of.
Who did Stephen Reed kill?
I don't remember.
What was his name? His dad was called Teddy, wasn't he?
Joe? No.
I don't. No, Joe Frost was the actor.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't remember, but he was really bland.
Steve.
He's gone out
Frank,
of my head.
Tim.
Anyway, you know who we're talking about. But also, Teddy was killed in the factory as well, wasn't he? With the whole bunch.
That is it not haunted? I would love them to do a story about Leo.
Leo, of course.
Dead Leo.
How could we forget?
Oh dear. Leo. Right, so he thinks he's killed him. So he comes back the next day and he finds that Jed is still alive. So instead of putting him in the bin,
Christmas miracle,
he gives him £3,000 and says, "Look, I'll give you a flat in Wigan. You can have a Wigan balm as well. That's delicious. Keep quiet. Go there and eat your food and be quiet." So Maria gets suspicious and thinks Tony has killed Jed.
Yeah, because Jed's just disappeared without a trace.
So Tony gets him to come to the Rovers, and he hides the fact that he's been strangled with some negligee by wearing a scarf. But he's, I'm still alive. And then Tony says to Jed, "I never want to see you again." So Carla goes and visits Jed and sees his neck marks.
Yeah, she's still suspicious.
Yeah, because and she confronts Tony about this, and he says, "Well, I saved Jed from trying to kill himself, and I'm trying to help him find somewhere in Wigan to live because I feel guilty about throwing him out of his home." Then he sends Jimmy. That was it, wasn't? No, Jimmy.
No, it's the same
He sends Jimmy after Jed to get him another scare, and he gives him a heart attack. So he's given him a stroke and now a heart attack.
And that's the last we hear of him.
I know, and we never get to find out what happened to Sonny Jim.
We never. No, we do. Sorry, I didn't write it.
Oh, well, why do you...
Well, when Tony kicks Jed out of his house. That's wrong. When Tony gives Jed a stroke, Jed goes into hospital, and Tony finds Sonny Jim the cat and says, "Oh, you have to cook by yourself now," and kicks the cat out of the house. But in early 2009, Sonny Jim turns up at Coronation Street, as you do. And then he is returned. He's reunited with Jed. Don't worry about this.
Well, we know, sadly, Kenneth Cope is no longer with us, but Jed lives on.
In what?
In the show, because he just had a heart attack. He didn't die.
Yeah, but I think he lives on, but it was a bit of an abrupt ending.
Yeah,
and I think it partly came from the fact that he was originally going to be killed. So when they brought him back in 2008, the plan was that Tony would claim another victim. He'd already bumped off via Jimmy, Liam Connor, and he was going to actually kill Jed Stone on Christmas Eve in the factory. And then Kenneth Cope gets this story idea and is like, I don't like that. I don't want to be killed off. Can I have a reprieve, please? And so Coronation Street's like, yeah, okay.
But you do need to write a story.
I wonder how many other people that would work with. I don't think it's in my character to be killed off.
Yeah, I think I'm immortal.
Well, he was always a ducker and a diver and evaded trouble for the rest of his life, so maybe this is one last attempt at that. But yeah, his final few appearances were, by the sounds of it, cobbled together a little bit just to give him a bit of a send-off, and then it was just a bit blunt with, anyway, he's had a heart attack, I'm sure he's fine. Yeah. And this whole return story was not originally going to go down this way as well, because when Tony was going to be menacing the residents of Nightingale Terrace, Jed wasn't originally going to be the character he was going to do it to. There was going to be this chap called Mr. Gamble, so he even had a name. And then June West, who was casting director at the time, said, well, look, why don't we bring Jed Stone back? Kenneth Cope is still working. That would be really cool to bring back a character from back in the day, and everyone seemed to like the idea, so that's how Jed returned to Coronation Street, just because of the casting director saying, ooh, how about this?
Good for you, June. It was going to be 4 episodes, but they extended it, didn't they? Yes,
I think he comes back in the summer, and then he has his stroke, goes into hospital, and 3 months later the action resumes. It does, maybe stretch the limits of credulity to think that he lived just around the corner from Coronation Street, and not once did he go to the Rover's Return or try and connect with any of the people like Ken or Emily that he knew from back in the day. But I guess if you turn over a new leaf and you say, no, I've given up on my criminal ways, then cutting all ties is the way to do it.
He's probably drinks down the Flying Horse.
Yeah.
Well, we moved house and we're not that far away from where we used to live, and we don't go to any of the same shops or anything anymore.
I suppose we don't, although I did drive past one today. Drove past the old Tesco Express. So anyway, this was quite a big thing in TV back at the time to have this guy back. 42 years was, at
television
the time,
history.
It was a Guinness World Record for the longest gap in appearances from a character played by the same actor. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So he was a record holder, but not for very long, because when Philip Lowry came back playing Dennis Tanner a couple of years later, he beat him because he'd been away from Coronation Street for 43 years.
Can't believe it.
Coronation Street didn't hold that record for particularly long afterwards as well, because it's now held by William Russell, who played Ian Chesterton in Doctor Who in the very first episode, I think. And then he was in an episode a few years ago. I don't remember how long. I think it was 40-something years that he'd been away from that character. And I think in between Philip Lowry and William Russell, there was another Doctor Who character who'd come back with an even longer stint. But, it's quite cool, but it does make sense that as Coronation Street has been going for quite a long time, that this record has been held by Coronation Street characters over the year. Even William Russell did play one of Rita's ex-husbands, Ted, in Coronation Street as well. So there we go.
And you can't even say, oh, well, it wasn't a continuous show. You can't give it to Doctor Who, because Coronation Street technically isn't also a continuously running show, because they
did have one or two little strike breaks here and there. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. The records could be broken again, technically. Don't really know how.
Don't know.
If anyone's got any ideas about who we can bring back to steal that Guinness World Record
from their retirement.
William Russell died a few years ago, didn't he?
We need somebody who was in it 44 years. No, we don't know what the
gap. I don't know what the gap was for William Russell now. Anyway, but anyway, that was it.
He's cheating.
Kenneth Cope, like we said, in that massive gap, he did get up to other things. He's not just known for Coronation Street. In fact, you may have heard of the show Randall and Hopkirk Deceased, which I've never seen. I know that they brought it back. They did a remake with Reeves and Mortimer in the early 2000s, but the show originated from the 60s or 70s, was it? I don't remember. And it had
57 years he did it.
57 years.
Forget it.
That's quite a gap. That is quite a gap to break. Yeah. So
where's the little kids that were in the first episode?
Kenneth Cope played Marty Hopkirk, who was a detective who dies in the first episode, and the story of the programme is you got his his living companion that's still solving crimes, and he can see the ghost of his dead companion. I've never seen it, but anyway, that it was quite a cult show, I think.
Yeah.
So Kenneth Cope was really well loved from that.
Yes.
He then in the 70s starred in a couple of Carry On films. He wrote scripts. He did all sorts. He did theatre.
Restaurants.
He opened 2 restaurants as well, and of course he made the odd appearance in TV shows, including, everyone say it along with me, The Bill, Doctor Who, Juliet Bravo.
Was he in Casualty? No.
No, I might have been in Casualty, I'm not sure. He was in Brookside. He played a character called Ray Hilton in Brookside, the Channel 4 soap between 1999 and 2002. He was actually in 171 episodes of that, so he was in more episodes of Brookside than Coronation
Where's
Street.
that podcast?
Now, I don't want to put words in Brookside fans' mouths, but I'm going to say that Kenneth Cope was still better known as Jed Stone than he was for Ray Hilton. But that could be just, I'm a little bit biased there. Corrie ended up being his last TV role, though, so It wasn't his first. That would have, if it was, that would have bookended it nicely, wouldn't it? But yeah, once he was offed by Jimmy Dockerton in Coronation Street, he did not make any other TV appearances. However, his daughter did. Between 2015 and 2016, Kenneth Cope's daughter Martha appeared for 6 episodes. You might remember this. I don't really, I'm going to say, but she played a character called Joanne, who was someone that Kevin Webster went out for a little bit. Mostly the point of that character was to fuel Anna Windas's fancying of Kevin. And actually, I do remember this bit. The end of her is that Kevin gets a bit bored with this Martha woman, and Anna sees this and takes the opportunity to get in there by marching into the Rovers and loudly declaring to all and sundry that I'm going to keep your baby, Kevin Webster. It's my last chance to be a mother, so deal with it. And Martha's like, you got this woman pregnant. This is too much drama for me. I'm going. So
Well,
Joanne does, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joanne, yeah.
Martha
Was the actress. You're absolutely correct. Do you remember that?
No.
I remember that bit with Anna at the end, vaguely, but...
I'm sure if I looked at a picture, I would remember.
I don't know whether I would. Anyway, that's it. I was kind of looking for interviews from Kenneth Cope to talk about, talking about Jed Stone. I didn't find a whole lot, although just a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, in 2019, he did an interview with Retro Boy. I found a website about it. It's mostly... the interview is about his role in the Carry On films, but he did have one Coronation Street question, to which he answered, when I first did Coronation Street, it was supposed to be a one-off character. I was this thug going around threatening people with a knife. I don't remember that. Did Jed Stone go around with a knife? And he could apparently still, after all these years, recite his lines as Jed Stone from this stint in the 60s.
Because it wasn't even like his first, like you said, it wasn't like his first role, so...
Very important to him. That's pretty cool that he could still recite his lines there. Anyway, he went on to say, these days, so many stars have big egos. I never had one, and I'd crucify anyone who was rude or selfish. I remember once on I've gone Scouts now, just easing myself into it. On Coronation Street, that we were filming outside, and it was freezing. All the extras were stood in the cold for ages, right? And so between takes, I would wander over to them and have a chat with them. I didn't mention that for any self-gratification, but I just think that's how it should be. So there we go. It seems like Kenneth Cope was a nice bloke. In fact, we got one of our listeners called Lucy, who, when we put it on Patreon this week that we were going to be doing a character profile of Kenneth Cope, she wrote in to us to say that he was, by all accounts, a lovely man because he lived in her town, and according to people nearby, people on local news groups and such, he was sadly unable to go out for the last few years of his life, but he did used to sit at his window and wave at people when he walked past.
That's such a lovely memory.
Which, according to Lucy, was very warm and fuzzy. Yeah. So that's nice. It was lovely to know that he's got a really beloved reputation that I'm sure will live on. Yeah,
and he was the announcement mentions his family.
The announcement of his death.
Week, yeah, that's right. And he was still married to Rennie Lister.
Yeah.
And he had 3 children, Nick, Mark, and Martha, who we've mentioned. So very, very sad, but what a long life that seems to have been very well lived.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not everybody has got nice stories.
Not everybody does. Not everyone does. And there was a real outpouring of love for Kenneth.
It sounds like he's really nice if he was just sitting at his window waving at people. That's adorable.
Yeah, that is.
What a nice guy. He probably thought they were extras. Oh.
Well, there we go. That is our tribute to Kenneth Cope and
Yes.
Jed Stone.
Jed Stone.
Do
I
check
wish
out
he
some
was
of
in
his
it more.
episodes if you can.
You know-
but he's really kind of there as a side-ish character.
Yeah.
Didn't make many appearances, but made enough to make a big impression, and that's
Well,
what
he's
you
in
want.
some
Really,
big
isn't it?
stories, and he was an important part of Corey's early history, and he made the Guinness World Records.
Yeah,
You know,
and honestly, this relationship between him and Minnie Caldwell was really,
Sweet.
really, really sweet.
If I could use, we talk a lot about AI and how it's evil and shouldn't use
I think
it.
it's great.
Well, if you
It's
could use
revolutionised my career.
what,
I just use it for a lot of my teaching.
you shouldn't.
It's not cheating. It's just a bit time saving.
Right, listen. I wish one thing I would love to be able to do with it is to make what ifs of like what would it be like if this character had been in Coronation Street all through the 60s. What storylines would there have been? Like, would
Okay,
AI...
so you're not deep faking or anything.
No,
you're saying what would the story
No,
be?
I could deep fake it. I'd get AI to make whole episodes of Coronation Street going, right, this episode, because we know that sometimes they had plans or like story ideas. I don't know that there's any access to any of those things, if they still exist, of what ideas they had for stories that never got made.
Or even for Jed Stone
Well,
when he
even
had to
AI.
leave for the equity strike.
Yeah, like AI could make up some stories for the character of Jed Stone in 1962. I'd love it.
Yeah. Bit of fan fiction.
Better than using Audrey Hepburn to sell chocolate.
You know,
with her
I wonder
corpse.
whether with these Coronation Street novels that get written these days, the Maggie Sullivan one, she's definitely getting close to catching up to when Coronation Street starts. But she could kind of take a sideline to what happened to characters when they left the street, couldn't
Yeah.
they? There's an idea
I
for
do
you, Max.
wonder, whether she's allowed to write about existing characters. I don't know. She
I mean,
does
the
write about
books
some of
do
them, doesn't
contain
she?
existing characters about what they did before, so I don't see any problem with.
I mean, I
with
know
why
they're not
what
allowed
they
to.
did afterwards.
They're not allowed to sell things with people's faces on, though, are they?
They're not. I think that if they did that, it wouldn't be quite as good because it wouldn't be set in Coronation Street. Like, is the adventures of Jed Stone, what he gets up to in Birmingham, really that exciting?
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
the adventures of Leonard Swindley busting ghosts
Oh, yes.
made a show.
They did make a show out of that, didn't they?
Right, well, that's enough of that. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's it.
That's it. That is it. What do you look at me like that for?
You just suddenly stopped like I'd
No,
interrupted
that's
a really
fine.
important...
I really appreciated
I
that
thought you
because
wanted me to shut up.
sometimes I do like to waffle at the end of these, and you tell me that
right.
I like to waffle, so thank you very much for taking the reins there and ending the show. I would pass them back to you to sign off.
That's it.